What we're doing here, just to let everybody know, is we are trying to produce these videos as ways to keep everybody engaged, keep everybody on track. We don't want you to feel bad if you didn't finish Genesis. We just want you to keep up and keep going with us. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we saw in the reading in Genesis, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be reading this week. Mm-hmm. And so I guess let's just jump in and what did you see?
Okay,
Mike,
well,
did you find anything
listen,
good?
I already hit my biblical content for the day saying the 6-day thing. But no, I wanted to add, though, even if you didn't read it all last week, start this week and pick up in Exodus. It's okay. We're going to read this. We're going to read through twice this year. So, if you miss a day here and there, this is not the end of the world by any stretch. Just keep up, and if you can make it up, that's great. But reading Genesis is great. It's refreshing. It's all these great stories that if you've been in church at all, you remember. I grew up in church, and so all the stories and Bible classes when we were kids, and the flood, and these sort of huge events that are crammed into about 10 or 11 chapters, right? Creation and Babel, and of course the flood and all of this. It's just, it's fun, and I think I said in one of my other videos, I'm reading a different version that I'm used to.
Which one are you reading?
I'm reading the Christian Standard Bible,
Okay.
which really isn't that different than the English Standard that I normally use.
Have you read that one before?
No, I've never opened it.
Okay.
So I figured it's close, and I would just try it that way. Yeah. So.
What Bible do you use standardly if you're generally studying or reading? Are you New American Standard?
I am an English Standard Version these days for a few years. So the CSB is not that different.
Yeah.
It's a very similar, has a very similar sort of heritage. But
did you notice things reading through Genesis this time that were like, that was different?
No. And I honestly, I don't really expect to.
Okay.
In this version. There is a version that I'm thinking about, of course this is months away, that is it's written from a Jewish perspective supposedly without Christian influence, so it's like purely like this Hebrew translation of the Old Testament. So I'm going to give that a try. I've heard it's not difficult, it's hard, but there's some big reading differences. I'm going to give that a try.
All right, watch this. I think this is how social media works. Drop a comment. Let us know what translation you're reading.
Good call.
Let us know if it's different than the one that you
Good call.
use.
Yeah.
So, how social media works?
I think so. Throw us a comment. I just thought that would be kind of cool. Like I do all my studying and reading in the English Standard, and then I look at other versions, as needed. But I just felt like, why not? It's going to go so quickly. Why not? We're consuming a lot of text at the same time. So,
yeah. Well, I'm doing something similar. I typically preach out of the New American Standard Bible, but I'm reading through the ESV.
Okay.
And I've read through the ESV before, so that's not a new translation to me. But I'm using a copy of the Bible that doesn't have chapters and verse divisions, and I'm finding that really helpful. I know some of our other members may be doing that as well. It's sort of a different flavor to reading the Bible that way.
Right. I encourage. I was talking about that in Bible class. Because if I remember, the New American Standard doesn't even do paragraphs, right? Or does the newer version does?
My New American Standard has paragraphs, but there's so many different varieties out there.
That's something I really encourage people to do. Is if you're read something that's done in paragraphs, because that's the way we all learn how to. If you're reading in English. The way we learned how to read, it's the way we learn how to think through thoughts. And so while it's not perfect, it's way better than just reading a long list of verses. And chapter divisions aren't necessarily in the correct spot, so and verses aren't in a good spot sometimes. So that's good. I've talked to a lot of people that said they're really trying to read it, sort of taking those kind of things out to try to just let the text, say what it says.
Yeah, very good. All right, Genesis, I'm curious, you talked about all of the big stories that we remember from childhood. There's obviously a lot of those characters. Joseph has a coat of many colors. You've got Abraham and these guys like that. Were there any stories or details that struck you differently this time, or any stories that maybe you remembered it was there, but you don't often think about it? It's like, oh, I forgot that was there. Or anything like that strike you?
I think just some of the things around Joseph, that there's a lot there that, what encompasses like 15 chapters or something. So that story is so much bigger. I think, yeah, there's details in there that I forget, about how his, which brother tried to not have him killed, and who was surprised when he was gone, and just it's kind of things like that, I guess. How he treats them later, and the way they interacted. It's not often that I don't know why. I guess I look at that part of the Joseph story. I always think of the dreams and the interpretation and kind of the end result of that, of the collecting the food, and then that sort of brings Jacob and the rest of them into Egypt. And I kind of forget about that whole interaction with Joseph and his brothers, and how frightened they were and how emotional Joseph was.
Yeah.
That always strikes me.
Yeah. Emotional. Joseph was emotional. His brothers were just scared stiff.
Scared.
Especially after their father died.
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, then again, right? I forgot about that. See, even then, like the second time, well, as long as he was alive, they were okay, but now he's gone. What is Joseph going to do?
Yeah, like
I mean, he's the
brother.
third most powerful person in Egypt or some
Yeah.
such.
Yeah. So a couple of things I noticed, just, why not? Genesis, of course, whenever I get into Genesis, I'm thinking of origin stories, because that's what the word means.
Right.
The genesis of everything. And I'm always struck with how many odd little stories exist in Genesis that seem to have, I'm not going to say no other purpose, but it seems like their primary purpose is just to say, that's how that city got its name. Or that's where that people group came from. Or that's where this nation came from. And it almost the whole way through, because even we're talking about the Joseph story, is Jacob, later called Israel, his sons, those are just stories that are letting us know where these tribes came from and what their background is and why they interact the way that they do.
Yep.
And so I'm often struck when I read Genesis by just these odd little stories that are sometimes even shocking and grotesque.
There's a few of those.
And then you got the origin story of Moab and the Ammonites, which of course come from Lot and his daughter's incestuous relationship. I don't know. Maybe we got to keep this PG. I don't know.
It's in there.
But you get these stories like that, and when you end up encountering Moab and Ammon later, we need to remember where they came from and why does Israel have this off relationship with these relatives of theirs? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the origin story we learn about them back in the book of Genesis. So a lot of that's fascinating to me, just the origin of all these things.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of that, and just even Abraham's other children and these other, Midian and these others, and all of these that become nations that we see playing some role somewhere else.
Yeah.
You were talking about priests. We have the priest of Midian and some things also that I'm sure you're going to hit on as we go forward on that series. So there's, especially those first 11 chapters, again, really cataclysmic. I don't know if we mentioned this in the video that got deleted, but I find, those are events that many people talk about as metaphoric or just stories, or this creation story is maybe based on some Assyrian or Mesopotamian creation story. I think it's the other way around. But Jesus certainly spoke about those events as literal, real events, the flood and creation in particular. And did he mention Babel? Now I'm confused.
I don't know if there's a mention of Babel specifically. I do think there's some interesting ties. I was talking to somebody this week about some of the ties to Babel in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another conversation for another day. But
we should do that.
There's some fascinating
But
connections.
of course, there's some just really strange things that we still wrestle with, the whole daughters of men and sons of God thing, and the Nephilim, and there's a lot of words that are hard to translate, and ideas that are hard sometimes to put into easily understood words and concepts that are happening, and that those kind of things will throw people off. Like we'll see these incidents where these people that God picked do really terrible things, or they lie, or they cheat people, or it's like the incest with Lot's daughters, or Judah and Tamar, and that's a really strange chapter in those events. And yet Judah's the one through whom David comes and Jesus ultimately comes. And so I think one of the things we have to realize as we're reading about people, no matter who they are, God's chosen or not, they're people, and they do terrible things.
Yeah.
And hopefully that can help us build a little grace for today when we or others do foolish and terrible things.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
I don't know, what else did you get? I mean, you've probably read it 100 times like me, so.
Well, the origin stories was kind of my big thing that I was focusing on. I was reading with an eye towards priests, and I'll probably continue reading the Bible this time with an eye towards priests just because of the series I'm preaching. And so, you notice off the bat, Melchizedek, which we talked about in our sermon this morning. Maybe I'll use this as an opportunity to tease a little bit about that series.
Go for it.
There's a lot of priests throughout Genesis, people who act in priestly roles, who, long before Aaron becomes a priest. And in fact, I think this is where we're going with our next sermon in that series, is the fact that that's the role that God gave Adam and Eve in the garden. Like, here's this space that is God's space, and he gives Adam and Eve the job to work in his space and to take care of his space. It's exactly what you see Aaron doing in the temple. Exactly what you see his sons doing in the temple. And so some of those connections, whenever you see these people in God's space, Jacob is in the house of God, Bethel. He names it Bethel. There's a whole naming, a story about why that city is named that. It's because Jacob was there with God, and he was tasked to do work for God in that place. And, so a lot of those things I was kind of focusing on, and then just the constant, here's where these people came from. I just couldn't. That was what just struck me every time. This city, Beersheba. Well, why did that city get its name? Well, it's because Abraham dug a well there. So every time Israel encounters that city later on, our mind goes back.
Right.
Oh, Abraham started that.
Right. We've been here before, right? As these people keep moving in these same regions, we've been here before. And then Jesus. We've been here before. We've been in these places before, as if we've read through our Old Testament history. It's really nice. It's really great.
So the way I like to think about Genesis, especially after having read it, is now we've got sort of the scene set, and now we can start learning about this people that God's going to bless the world through. And so Genesis sets the scene. We know all the players. We know the problem, introduces sin to us in Genesis 3, Genesis 4, Genesis 6, Genesis 11. All of these sin stories. So we've got the characters, we've got the problem, we've got the locations. Like the scene is set for this drama to unfold, and that's where we're going next week. Is we're going to start seeing this drama in the book of Exodus.
Well, I think that's a good way to think about it, right? People think about Scripture sometimes as this dry, boring thing, but it is about people. It's about God dealing with people and communicating with people, and there is a lot of drama, and so we get a lot of narrative, of course, in this part. As we get to Exodus, we'll get to a lot of, what would we call it, exposition and law, which is a bit challenging to read sometimes.
We'll get our first test this next week.
Right, we'll get a challenge there, but now the lens sort of focuses down on what will become the people of, or by the time we get to Exodus 1, I guess what has become the people of Israel. They've grown into this numerous people. So, and that challenges people sometimes thinking, how God deals with people, or why he chose this people, or he only cares about these people. And I think we highlight those things where that's just not the case. He's working certain things through these people. But yeah, now we'll get to see it. Exodus is it says a lot about holiness. I try to read Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers with the idea, like thinking about all of that law and so on that's given, is how does this demonstrate God's love? And that helps me get through some of the, if you steal someone's cow, you get caught stealing their cow, you got to give them the cow back plus 20% or what have you.
Yeah.
And these kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that's a really good perspective. I think one of the ways that I have read Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers, I'll just lump all of these law books that we're about to hit together. I've heard it said, yes, we should read Exodus, and it should make us feel happy that we're not under the old law.
Yes.
And maybe there's truth to that.
Yes, for sure.
But I like the perspective you just shared, which is, yes, there's a benefit to not being under that law anymore. But what we need to recognize is the law was for the benefit of Israel. It was in and of itself a act of grace and love towards Israel on God's part. And so, we look at it and go, wow, how could they possibly keep those 600 some odd commandments as the Jews count it? How could they do that? And maybe we need to train ourselves as we read through Exodus to think differently about that.
I think so. I think we need to read Scripture also from the perspective that these people, are primitive in their understanding of God, right? Especially as we read through Genesis. I mean, we're reading it from a New Testament perspective. We have a lot more information than they had as all this was unfolding. Exodus gets the people, maybe closer to God, and there's more understanding because there's more explanation. I think of it like with my kids. When they're really little, they don't get a lot of explanation. First they get, well, this is just what it is. This is right, this is wrong. And then, but as they get older, they get more explanation, but they also get more freedom, more liberty. And those laws or rules, that we may have had as parents were there for their protection and their good, but eventually most of that falls off, right? Brush your teeth 3 times a day. Later on they get to, well, I brush my teeth because I need to, because it's good for me. In a spiritual sense, like humanity is growing and maturing. Then the Lord comes and we get some release. We turn 18, we become adults. I have to now make decisions for myself. It's a little bit probably oversimplified, but I think of it because it's unfolding over several thousand years. Yeah. And so we have to learn this as we go. So I think Exodus starts getting us more to a lot of the specifics. And again, holiness and cleanness and uncleanness, these are huge themes in Exodus right from the beginning. But also God's love and God's care, right? Yeah. So.
Okay, so maybe we scared everybody off from the Exodus.
No way.
We're gonna get law. That'll start in about Exodus chapter 20. I didn't look at the schedule to see what day we'll start reading that. The good news is the first half of Exodus it continues the story. And so we're going to get more stories that we're familiar with. Moses. Yeah. We're going to get the 10 plagues. We're going to get the Exodus event, walking through the Red Sea, some of these great biblical scenes.
Some of the most recognizable.
Yeah. And so I guess what I would encourage us to do is understand that there will be some tedious things, but God is going to first, maybe this is a way to conceptualize Exodus, He's first going to show Israel who He is through these mighty activities. And then the last part, He's going to teach Israel who He is through these laws.
Good. It's a very good way to look at it.
And so if we can, just understand that the book is working together in some fashion. It's not just, and now you have to endure the reading of the law. Right. There's a purpose to it. Right. And so, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about Exodus.
I just think we got to look at all of Scripture that way. Like it's all working together. I'm gonna tout my series of sermons.
Please do.
Which is going to be it's on Bible reading and why we should be reading and why it's good for us. So the first lesson is, why did God give us His Word? And so the whole thing we talked about in my Bible class this morning, all Scripture is breathed by God and profitable for rebuke and correction and teaching and all that. It's super important, but you got to look at it as parts of a larger whole. God's always working towards something. Whatever is going on, and we read all these stories and we kind of get lost in some of the details and some of the weeds. And I also point out, this is not a history book in the sense that it gives us all the details that we might want. I'm a history professor. It does not satisfy all of my curiosity sometimes. But yes, don't fear that that's just going to do you in. From experience, I think we're starting to get to the area probably where it is the hardest, maybe, to stay with it because of that. But then once you get out of this part, we get back into more familiar territory, more narrative, poetry, those kind of things. And so I think fair warning is involved to the next couple of books.
Yeah, and I would, not to get too far ahead, in my experience, there's two places where it gets hard. The law here in Exodus and Leviticus, it gets really challenging, and then it'll be smooth sailing for a while, and then in my experience, when you get to the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, I tend to get bogged down.
Those can be tough.
So my encouragement is going to be to anybody listening to us, anybody trying to follow along with this Bible reading plan, just keep reading.
Just keep reading.
Even if you feel like you are not absorbing any of it, you will pick things up. Questions will be answered. Even if not every question is answered or everything is picked up, you're going to pick stuff up if you just keep going.
I think that's excellent. I mean, people are at various stages of reading comprehension, reading levels. We talked briefly about translations. There's a lot of different translations. Some are much more difficult. The King James is a fine translation. It's incredibly difficult for a 21st century person to read. There's some bad translations out there too, but find one, ESV, New American Standard, New King James, the CSB, they're all pretty good, and they'll help you with that. But you may take more or less time, but that's it. It's like anything else, repetition. Very few people can remember everything they read the first time, the third time. And Scripture is one of those things that when you read it 100 times, yes, we'll find connections and we'll remember more, and then we'll have more questions, and then we'll have more, we read it again, and there'll be more of that. So if you've not ever read through it before, look forward to that, because it's a great feeling when you start going, oh, okay, Daniel's talking about this thing over here, but I already read about it in Jeremiah, and we're making connections, and Jesus is talking about something that Noah said or did, and it's really rewarding. And I think good for growing up, right? We want to learn better. We want to be able to practice, talking about holiness and things. We want to be where the Lord wants us to be. You can only do that from knowing what the Word says. That's sort of, to me, like that's it. We can preach all day long, and we'll tell you, we will reprove and rebuke and exhort like we're supposed to. That's our purpose. But that just is kind of hitting the surface. If you're reading behind all that, we will all grow so much more together.
Absolutely. All right. I have no more great words of wisdom for you.
I don't. I think we probably waxed way too long this time.
I don't know how long we went, but we'll call it there. If you're still watching with us, if you are still reading with us, we just want to encourage you to keep going.
Hit the QR code, get the schedule.
That's right. I don't know if that's going to be on this side of us or that side of us, but it'll be somewhere. Maybe we could put a floating one right in the middle of us. I don't know.
We need a sign that tells us where everything's going to be.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off. Thank you so much for reading with us, and we look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Let us know where you're at and how you're doing.